Hi everyone, welcome to An Hour with LawSikho. Today we have with us Thyagarajan, who's a lawyer practicing in the Supreme Court as well as Delhi High Court, and he's going to tell us about things to avoid doing in the first few years of litigation. What are the major challenges people face, and what are the mistakes people often make? We are going to talk about that today. And I am Ramanuj, your host. I am from lawsikho.com, iPreaders, and let us get started. So over to Tyagarajan. Why don't you tell us, Tyagarajan, about yourself before we begin, and about your background and academic and
Sure.
other.
So, hello everyone, and thank you, Ramanuj and LawSikho, for giving me this opportunity. So, I essentially finished my BCom in my hometown, Coimbatore, and then for a year I was quite lost about what I wanted to do. And then somebody told me out of the blue that law is not a bad option. During my BCom, I was pursuing CA, and as most of CA aspirants' dreams go, it's not an easy course to finish. So I joined law, and I somehow made it to Indian Law Society's Law College in Pune. And even in law school, I was not, let's say, very keen and focused. And given ILS Law College's location, I hung out most part of my college life in Film Institute, which is right next door. And I wanted to become a film critic. And the day I actually applied to all major film schools, my most favorite film critic, Roger Ebert, he passed away. And that was the end of the dream. And even after, law school and some time, there was some time to contemplate. And finally, I chose litigation, not because it was easy to, it was the first go-to option, not because people were not offering me jobs and anything. It was because it looked like, it was a lot of adrenaline rush, which honestly I required a lot. So that is how I ended up in litigation. It took me a long time to really focus on litigation and what I wanted in litigation, because given its vast nature, it took me a really long time to figure out. And to be precise, it took me 5 years to figure that out. And I am here to tell you how I screwed up a lot of things, and how I did a few things right that got me to where I am. And also, as a disclaimer, my mistakes need not be really everybody's mistakes. You could commit new mistakes too. So it's not like a comprehensive, conclusive, whatever it is, interaction on what mistakes that you are bound to commit. It's just one small, introduction to what mistakes that you might commit. So that's about me, Ramanuj.
Got it. So so I mean, I totally understand all the cautionary things, but before you tell us about all the mistakes you made, if you could tell us about some of the successes. So what are the highest point in your legal career so far? Like the things that you're really proud of.
A thing that I'm really proud of is that I have worked for amazing firms. I've worked for amazing seniors. So I worked for a very good civil litigation office in Coimbatore, who gave me a lot of work. Then I moved to Chennai and worked for one Mr. Murari, a senior advocate, who was again very encouraging and nice. Then I moved to Karanjawala in Delhi, which is again a great firm to be in, great place to be in. Now I work for Mr. Balbir Singh, senior advocate, who's again a great boss, very encouraging. So the one thing I am proud of per se is the people I've worked for. They're all prolific, and all really nice and encouraging bosses with great work. I mean, quality and quantity wise.
Right, got it. So how long exactly have you been practicing?
So I started in 2013. It's been 5 years now. Yeah, in Delhi, I spent 2 years in Delhi. now, and I've been in Madras for a year, and I spent roughly about 2 years in Coimbatore too, in the district court there. It's been 5 years.
Great. So let's jump straight into the real issue, which is what are the biggest mistakes. So why don't you tell us what was your biggest mistake till date in terms of building your career in litigation?
See, the biggest mistake till date is that I over-assessed myself. I took a lot of impulsive decisions. So I like, as in I mean, in comparison to lot of my friends who graduated with me from the same law school, I feel I could have done a lot more. I always felt, I deserved a lot more than what I was getting, without knowing a lot, without having the requisite knowledge to get there. So that is one thing that I see is quite rampant in the freshers these days, who are they,
I want to say something here, Tyagarajan. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I want to
yeah,
add something here.
yeah,
What happens is that when people study law for 5 years, you
hmm,
know, and they graduate
hmm,
and they have written all these 50 exams or like 30 exams, depends on which course you are doing, and you have scored marks and you've studied these thick books. Somehow there is this, pride of thinking that they know stuff that comes amongst lawyers when they graduate. And I think they are most proud at the moment when they've just graduated and had no interaction with the legal system yet, and they are like really proud at that point of time, that they think that the world is at their feet. And that's a very common thing. I did that mistake too, and I totally understand what you're saying.
correct. I mean, that is like the first mistake I did. That's the first mistake everybody does. So that is what I'm trying to say, and at least the trend has to decrease somewhere. Where you should realize that there is lot more than the 50 exams you've written, probably the 10 moots you've done, or the cups you brought home from probably across the world. There's a lot more. The moment you step into a courtroom, irrespective of it, whether it is the Chief Justice of India's courtroom or a Munsif courtroom in a small district, you will realize what actual litigation is all about. Anybody can tear you apart. Uh, I mean, it's just that uh, you cannot go and flaunt your moot knowledge in front of a judge. It's just, you just get torn apart in a matter of minutes. So that's the first mistake I did. Then I got torn apart. I actually had to go. I mean, they sent me to take an adjournment. My first day as a practicing lawyer. What happened was that the judge refused to give me an adjournment. I had to somehow beg as in not literally. So finally, the last thing I told him was that if you don't give me an adjournment, I'd probably get fired. This is the first day of my job. So he laughed at it and finally gave me an adjournment. So this intimidating incidents are what that make you a decent lawyer, if not a good lawyer. This, yeah, this happens a lot to a lot of freshers.
Okay. Tell us more about this. Like, why? I mean, if you know your law, sometimes I think that's one of the
If I may interrupt, Ramanuj, I think your voice is breaking. I'm not able to hear you properly.
yeah, I guess there's an internet problem.
Okay, now it's
Can you
better.
hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, now it's better.
I was just asking that, what are the common mistakes? Like, if we can be a little more granular and go into what are the mistakes people make? I mean, one mistake I know that they go
Correct. I can still not hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, now it's audible. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah. Question.
no, but I'll start with the common mistakes. Like you said, they go unprepared to the court. So adding to that, it's also the fact that since I started my career in a district court in a tier two city, it is very important that you respect your colleagues in the fraternity, irrespective of how good they are or bad they are, what law school they went to, or I mean how their communication skills is. Everybody comes handy at some point in time. If not for them giving you work, it is at least, I mean, a lot of they'll at least end up encouraging you at some point in time or the other. um, for instance, I've stumbled so many times in the courtroom in Coimbatore. And then there were these people who came and rescued me. And initially, I was like, I had all the pride. I went from ILS, and Coimbatore Law College is not all that famous, at least not as famous as ILS is. So that it really doesn't work. Okay, you us respect not respecting people is something that won't work in our fraternity. And adding to that, it's also very important to do all kinds of work. For instance, if you like if you're given, let's say, to draft a mere memo of let's say an extension of an interim order, it's nothing is beneath your standards. You're just starting your career. So it's very important that you don't refuse any kind of work. And it's also very important that irrespective of what litigation it is, if it's even if it's rent control, even if you're someone from, like, let's say, the best law school in the country or the most expensive law school in the country, even if it's a small rent control matter, you must it is very important that we take it seriously. Because at the end of the day, as lawyers, our duty is to protect people who come, you know asking for help. So if these are some mistakes that I see a lot of people doing these days. Like, these are common mistakes that I'm noticing, and these are common mistakes that I have done myself. So moving on, Ramanuj.
Hi.
Hi,
I
hi.
had I was lost for a moment. It got disconnected, but now we are back online.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
I think you can hear me and see me, right?
Yeah, I can. Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. I heard the point when you were saying. I mean, I heard up to the point where you were talking about how lawyers. Every lawyer is important. It's important to respect everybody, and everybody's gonna come handy at some point or the other.
Correct,
And
correct.
beyond that, I could hear. So if you can repeat that point.
Yeah, so what I was trying to say is, it is important that you respect all the colleagues. And then adding on to that, it is also important that you do whatever work comes your way. For instance, at a starting level, let's say your first 1 year, you might not get to draft a plaint or anything for anything big like that. You might get to draft a memo, a counter, whatever it is. Nothing is beneath your level. When you start your career in litigation, and nothing is beneath your level. Also, it is important that you don't pick and choose what kind of work you want to do. Like, irrespective of what law school you come from, where it is and how expensive it is, it is very important that you don't pick and choose. For instance, if you're offered a rent control matter before, let's say, a rent controller or a municipal court, as we say in Tamil Nadu, it's you don't have to deny it, because it will teach you something or the other, right? That's very important in our profession. It's something I've learned from my mistakes, is that uh, never think any kind of work is beneath your standard.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's a very good lesson that, when you are beginning as a lawyer, no work is beneath you. Everything will give you an opportunity to learn and will be useful at some later point, that
Correct.
knowledge. Correct. So, what else? Like, what other mistakes do people make? I think one mistake that I have seen people making or have heard about it is that people simply kind of underestimate how much preparedness is needed to argue a case or to even make a draft. I mean, we underestimate the entire amount of work. Is that correct? Would you say that is correct from your experience?
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
if
see,
you are underestimating I mean, your level of preparedness in the first 1 year or 2 years, it's completely all right. Because that is when you realize the amount of work that needs to go into even draft a plaint or a petition. Beyond that, I think is just plain stupidity. Forgive me for my language. But yeah, it's very common that we a lot of us tend to underestimate the level of preparedness for a matter. I mean, sometimes we end up thinking it's a very small matter. We don't really, need to read the brief before we go and appear before the judge. Ultimately, it ends up, messing up your whole reputation. Whatever you built on working on big matters, doing a lot of research, one small matter somewhere, and your ill preparedness or you not being able to tell the judge what the prayer is. This has happened to me. It was a small matter, small interlocutory application, uh, but I was just not prepared. I just thought I'll go say this and that, and the judge would give me a relief. That did not happen. Ultimately, he went into the depth of the matter, and I was embarrassed.
I took to the
So that is it's a very common mistake that we all will make, and with no exception, everybody. I mean, most of you who are listening to this will also end up making this mistake.
well,
But
listening to this
as
as much
much as you can,
as
please
much
try
as
and
you can,
avoid it.
please try and avoid it. Okay. So what's happening? Sometimes we are losing the maybe because of internet speed. I'm losing you in the middle. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, so let's move on to the next point. So what else would you say are the common mistakes? We have got like three major points from you so far. One is regarding that people do not respect their colleagues in the bar and underestimate others, and kind of judge them because of the kind of law schools they are from or whatever, and or how qualified those lawyers are, and it often comes us to bite us back later on.
That is true.
And that is true. You also said about that people of sometimes don't take small matters and they think that okay, something is beneath me, and that's kind of one of the major hindrances. You also talked about unpreparedness, being not being prepared because the matter is small, and that how it can bring your entire reputation crashing down. So this is great. What else are the mistakes that young lawyers frequently make?
So another
So another
round of mistakes
round
that
of
most
mistakes
of us
that
end
most
up
of us
making is,
end up
hey,
making.
I'm getting a
Hey,
lot of echo. Yeah, this is better. So what we end up making is that what I did was that to come to Delhi too quickly. For me, it was like a dream. So I had just I'd just been in Madras for a year, but the moment I got an opportunity to come to Delhi, I just jumped on it. So if you are to build, let's say, a strong base in Delhi, you must 100% build a strong base in your home state or hometown or whatever it is. So always start from the beginning, right? And that is very important. It is very necessary and important that you start from wherever you are and then come to Delhi or wherever you want to be. So to me, I still regret having not built a strong enough home base in Madras and Coimbatore, so that I that would let me go independent here. but that's fine. Again, it's very important that you learn from your mistakes. So that is one thing. And a lot of freshers here, that a trend that I've noticed is that they end up joining offices that don't draft, like a senior counsel's office. That is the biggest mistake you'd end up doing, because learning drafting as a lawyer is very important, and no lawyer in the history of judiciary across the world has ever come up or ever become a big lawyer without knowing drafting. And it's very, very important that in the initial 2 to 3 years of your career, you spend in an office that lets you draft. And the importance of drafting also is that, the moment you draft a matter, you get a grip of it. The moment you receive someone else's draft, you're just reading and stuff, you don't get a grip of the matter in totality. So it's very important that in the first 2 to 3 years of your career, you be in an office that lets you draft.
That's very interesting. So if I, how can I become better at drafting? Like, one of the things that people frequently ask us, our students included, that I am studying. I have studied, like, my law, and there I have studied my section and case laws. And there used to be one class called pleading, drafting, and something like that. But I was just talking to another law student the other day. He said that, I know how to draft an affidavit, but I don't know how to draft anything else. So of course you look at other drafts which are there in your chamber, and you get handed down some templates. But in the end, how do you learn to draft well? Like, what are the challenges and what are the mistakes people make in that?
So
So
you again.
you
Oh. So what happens, what drafting is like, it comes over time. Okay, I'm still not confident about how good a draftsman I am, but nobody is confident until and unless you reach a certain stage in life where you are confident that whatever you're putting in a draft is absolutely right, and you're not leaving anything out. But from what I've learned, uh, what I'd like to share is that it's very important that you sit with the client, irrespective of what your senior tells you, what your associates tell you. It's very important that you sit with the client and take direct instructions. Otherwise, you don't know from paper what the client wants out of a draft. And secondly, it's very important to use the appropriate language. It's not like a conversational English that you can write anything and get away with it. And most importantly, please do not assume that the judges don't read your pleadings. The judges do read your pleadings, and a good judge will find out mistakes. And in my career, a short career of 5 years so far, um, I have seen judges pulling up the people from registry for passing a draft because of bad drafting. And in the recent past also, I think the former chief justice rather, pulled up an AOR for drafting a really bad SLP, and the senior who was appearing had to apologize. So what is very important is, never assume the judge's ignorance of what you're drafting, what your draft is, what is in the pleadings. Always sit with the client and understand the client, what the client wants out of the particular pleading. And before you draft, irrespective of how good you are at that particular legislation, make sure you read all the sections that would be applicable for that particular pleading. uh, Otherwise, it's, see, you might come up with a great draft, you might come up with a great petition, but that's never going to, you'll never be confident about it. and it's okay really to copy from the formats that are available in your chambers, but it's also very important to make sure that you copy well, not just copy paste all the details. And I am guilty. I have done things like this. I've just copy pasted a lot of things that was not even relevant to my matter, and I got pulled up for it. But if learning a format is completely all right, but make sure what is in the format is what you actually worked for, and not what someone who drafted it the first time did. That's very important.
So, we are basically an education, online education provider, and one of our goals is to create courses which help people to become better at, at these kind of things, maybe drafting, being able to drafting. We do not yet have a course on this area on civil drafting, or criminal drafting for that matter. But this is something that we are working on, and I thought this is an opportunity while talking to you to ask for your feedback as to what do you think we should teach. Like imagine if you had say a 1 year curriculum to teach, and I'll tell you the format, right? What format we use to teach. So one thing is that we give study material to you to the student to read. Okay, that is for their self-paced study material to read. Now there may be templates in that and all of that, but then we will give exercises every week. So we'll give them a couple of exercises every week, and they have to do the exercise, and then they have to show it to us, and we give them feedback. So this is the process. Now this we do in contract drafting, for example, or we do this in M&A. We have a course on M&A investment law. We do that over there. So we are coming up with a course in this, and this is the format. But I wanted to take your advice and feedback on, what do you think we should be teaching when you are teaching civil drafting or criminal drafting to somebody? What kind of things are critical to teach? 5 critical things to teach.
Okay, so first thing
Okay,
you
so
must be
first thing you
teaching
must be teaching
is language.
is language.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
And
what the second thing you must be teaching is the law. Drafting also involves quite a bit of law. So the law involved in drafting, some of the legislation, for instance, have their own drafts. I think CPC, for instance, has some drafts for some petitions. So the law should be taught. And the third thing is these basic things on how to take instructions from the client. That has to be a practical session. That for instance, this a course could be designed in a way where you are sitting with a client, and someone is and you give the lawyer an instruction, and the lawyer takes down and does it. And the fourth thing is to to be able to face rejection in terms of your draft getting rejected by your senior. It is going to happen 100% in the first 1 year. 100% of your drafts would be 100% rejected. Okay, that's very important. And the fifth thing is to really self evaluate your draft. Most of the times, what we end up doing is, you just draft it and push it on to someone to see whether it's good or bad. What we fail to understand, what I've learned, thanks to a colleague of mine in Karanjawala, that you give someone a bad draft, it takes equal amount of time to fix it and send it to the client. So that self evaluation is really required. And I'll add one sixth thing. The sixth thing that you must actually be keeping in mind is to teach a particular candidate is what document to put in the draft and what not to put in the draft. For instance, if the client gives you 50 documents, it's not necessary that you put annex all the 50 documents. You have to use your discretion, and that comes with experience. But if you are building a course, might as well include something of that sort.
I think that is very useful suggestion. So, how do you think that people can get better at one major difficulty area is that to working with your senior or working with your colleagues. This is something that we are not taught while you're in law school. I mean, we have very little sense of how to work in a team. Actually, most of the time lawyers are not known to be team players, and often we mess up on that front, and this is a major impediment for professional growth of lawyers. And you mentioned a bit of it about respecting other lawyers, but what kind of challenges people face with respect to their organizational skills and, like, personal relationship skills, if you can throw
Yeah,
some light on this.
sure. See, again, at the end of the day, if yeah, most of us first generation lawyers have to start our careers in a chamber, in somebody's office. So, what we need to understand is, irrespective of our backgrounds, a case is a team effort, right? You need to have a good rapport with your clerk for him to file the case properly, remove all the objections. You need to have a good rapport with your colleagues who've had experience in how things are done in the office, and how the regarding the office rules and everything. So without all this, irrespective of how good a lawyer you are, how skilled you are at doing your work, it's not going to work out. And um, and another important thing, and it's a little controversial thing to say, is a lot of people complain about office politics, but that you just, I mean, for the first few years of your career, I think it is as good as, you must stay away from it, and you must not even get into it, because these are your learning years. And if you end up talking about people, and if you end up doing things like, let's say, talking about your seniors and stuff, you have no idea what will happen to you at the end of the day. Just be focused on the fact that you are here to learn, and you're here to be a successful lawyer, uh, rather than you're trying to establish your position in an organization as an influential person. That is never going to work. What will work is that if you're, if you have good relationship with your boss, good relationship with your colleagues, a good relationship with your clerks also, because they're the most important part of a litigation office. If you've seen, a lot of clerks do wonders. I've seen, especially in Delhi, they're so effective in doing their work, that they do half of what a lawyer can do. So it's very important that you be respectful to everybody. At the same time, it's also very important that you don't do anything that makes the other person feel uh, disrespected, or let down, because at the end of the day, you don't want to face it yourself. What I'm trying to say is, in the first few years of being a lawyer, it's very important that you don't do anything in an organization, in an office, that you will regret, right? That was that. These are very important things, because irrespective of how small or big the office is, you might just be two people. There are going to be clashes, there are bound to be issues between differences of opinion. It's very important that you take one day at a time, and not bottle things up, uh, and blow it all on one day, and then end up quitting work. I've seen a lot of people do this. A lot of people bottle their emotions up, and then one fine day they just quit, without having any backup option or anything. So what I'm trying to say essentially is, work towards learning, having and also having good relationship with your colleagues, because tomorrow, who knows who will give you work, and even your clerk can give you work, right? So it's very important that you keep maintain good relations with everybody.
God. So, for us, we hear a lot of times that it is really difficult to start your practice in the initial years because the income is so low, and it's very difficult to make your ends meet. So, what is your advice with respect to that?
See, my advice would be is what I would like to say is that so in the first few years, if you wish to go independent, it is also important that you are in a chamber that lets you take your own work, right? For instance, a lot of seniors encourage juniors taking their own work, and in fact, I've seen a few generous seniors in Delhi who appear for free for their juniors' matters. So what I'm trying to say is just because you get one matter or you've gotten two matters, it's not necessary that you go independent immediately, because matters do come to an end. There is no guarantee that you will have a steady inflow of matters. So until and unless you gain that confidence, uh, please be attached to a chamber. uh, Please make sure it is a good chamber, a liberal chamber that lets you take your own work, and then probably think of going independent, because establishing an office is very expensive an affair. It's also very important that you build good infrastructure in your office and not just have one chair and two table I mean two one table and two chairs and stuff. So make sure you have that amount of investment and have that amount of matters before you go independent.
Correct. So, what are the other mistakes people make? What are the other major areas where people tend to make mistakes?
See, the most important area that people tend to make mistakes is the most important area that I made a major blunder is that uh, everything goes on fine, but one day you realize you're not a specialist in anything. Right, I mean, you do a lot of civil matters, you do a lot of matters that come your way, but you've not done anything so consistently that you're not considered a specialist in any matter. And when you're looking to go independent, and that's a great hindrance, because be assured that a client will identify you based on what your specialization is. And it's very important that you specialize in something and not just be a general guy who does matters. For instance, a lot of people prefer specializing in taxation and competition. These are niche areas, and I'll give it to you in writing that there is going to be demand in these areas for a long time to come. Given how rapidly our economy is evolving and everything. So please specialize in something, even if you're not very sure what it's going to be after your law school, or once at after 1 year of your experience in the bar. It's okay, it's good to search and good to identify an area that you really enjoy doing. Okay, and just roving around doing all the matters that come your way is fine, but after some point in time it leads to a lot of regret. So please specialize in an area and identify yourself with that area. It's very important that you do that. And secondly, the other most important thing that I wanted to tell you all is that just because you're a lawyer, uh, please don't go on and pick fights, go on and challenge everything that is around you. It is fine. I mean, you're a lawyer and it's good, and the most successful lawyers I've seen are the silent ones, and the most and the ones who are not done, ones who have not really gone on being gone ahead and being snobbish. So it's very important that you maintain that level of humility. Make yourself accessible to everyone, so that they could access your skills as a lawyer and as a human being also.
Fantastic advice. So, if you can tell us a little more about uh, what are the, like when you start practicing as a lawyer. I mean, one major thing I find is that most lawyers kind of get really caught up, and I speak to a lot of lawyers who about this. So, once you start practicing, you really got get very caught up in the day-to-day activities, and somewhere your personal growth stops, or that education. Like, it's understandable that more knowledge you have as a lawyer, it's critical. Like you're talking about specialization. Uh, but somewhere lawyers kind of stop growing the intellectually, because they are only dealing with the same kind of matters frequently, and drafting appearing. And sometimes I have heard lawyers lamenting that I have 10 years have gone by, and I have not made a conscious effort to develop my knowledge or skills in a direction. Whatever is happening, obviously it's a rigorous work, so that itself is a hard challenge for a lot of people, and it does lead to a certain amount of development. But I keep hearing that at some point this becomes very repetitive, monotonous, and the growth stops. So do you agree with that, and what's your experience?
Uh, it see There is no profession under the sun that does not become repetitive and monotonous, but at some point in time beyond law, I think, I don't know if I'm too small or big to say this. uh, just beyond drafting and appearing, what we must also aspire to develop the field of law that you've specialized in over a period of time, right? It becomes your responsibility. So and being a lawyer, I think your intellectual growth never stops, because that's the amount of people you meet, the amount of conversations you have with people, uh, good or bad, whatever it is, the amount of friends you make, the networking you do, that in itself is somewhat fulfilling, though not very required. It is required, I mean, to network and everything. But what I'm trying to say is, the profession itself is a lot of intellectual involvement in it, that
Yeah,
you don't
I agree
stop
to you.
you don't stop growing, you just keep growing. And beyond a point, after you specialized in law, it is, I think, one's responsibility to develop it. uh, I've Without having to take names, I'm constantly reading about this fresher who was also an intern in a firm I worked in, was doing a lot of good things. I mean, filing PILs and stuff. So, as a lawyer, it is also our responsibility to develop law, rather than just exploiting law for commercial purposes. And if you look at law from that perspective, I don't think there is an intellectual stagnation at any point in time.
Hmm. So, I think that's very good advice. But I keep, I'll give an example. Like recently, I was talking to somebody who has been practicing for about 5 years, and he said that I have been doing DRT matters and consumer matters for the last 5 years, and I'm earning enough. I'm earning sufficiently good amount of money, and but I feel very stuck. I want to do different kind of matters. I want to do more challenging things, but I'm not getting that opportunity. And So, for example, he said that he would like to learn about say merger and acquisitions and investment law and stuff like that. And there is work in his city with respect to this, but these are done by very different kind of like very senior lawyers only. And but the thing is that what I feel is that somehow whatever you specialize in, maybe, I mean, I completely agree with you that law is one career where the intellectual challenge keeps you on your toes, because every time there's a new case and new laws to learn, there are amendments, and there are like your opposition is attacking you from angles that you did not consider perhaps, and that keeps you on your toes. But at the same time, do you think there is need for a conscious effort? Like, I had spoken to a senior advocate some days back on another interview. So he suggested that he makes sure that he has a certain amount of reading time every day. I mean, he makes sure that at least 2 hours goes into reading and developing himself. So what kind of conscious systems can be put into place, in your opinion?
Yeah, like you just mentioned, it's very important that you take time out to read at least for an hour a day. One very interesting thing that I've observed from my present boss is that he wakes up at 4 in the morning, and even if there are multiple matters to do on that day, I think he makes it a habit to read the newspaper, understand the world around him, read something or the other. At least I've been trying to incorporate that in my life. So what is very important is that whatever you're reading, sometimes you might not be very inclined to read the law or your papers for the day. uh, it or you might just not want to do anything. But as a lawyer, to break the monotony, it is very important that you read. I mean, irrespective of what you're reading, you might just be reading, let's say, India Today or Outlook or whatever it is. It's very important that you read. The It's very important that you get a grasp of your surroundings. uh, like Ramanu just mentioned, I do understand a lot of people uh, get start feeling very monotonous once they've hit a particular point in career. At 5 years, you're not so big that you can think of developing the law or anything. So even if you do, it can be passed off as a publicity stunt. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, that monotony, one is bound to hit at this point in time in their lives. But it can be overcome. Like I said, it's not necessary that you uh, only do matters that you specialize in. It's like eating a thali, right? I mean, you like one particular dish, you don't keep eating it. You taste everything, but you concentrate on what you're eating. You eat what you like the most. So irrespective of this, one thing I've noticed in a senior's offices, irrespective of what a senior specializes in, there is a little bit of variety here and there. Even if a senior is specialized in tax, he 100% be having, let's say, a criminal matter or a civil matter. Not that he doesn't know how to do it and he wants to learn. It's just that it's that variety that that a senior would like to do once in a while. So that's it's very important. So what I'm trying to say is, even if you're a specialist in one particular area, even if you identify yourself with that particular area, make sure that you don't deny work that comes your way from other forums or other matters. It's very important that if you're going to DRT 4 days a week, make sure you go to Patiala House or let's say High Court 1 day a week. That will keep you going. Like if you're especially working in big firms, uh, your work is very segmented. Your work is so segmented that you are allotted one particular fora to go. You're allotted a particular variety of matters to do. That is bound to get monotonous. But also, what they do is to spice things up. There is some variety thrown here and there. There is matters from other team that sometimes come to your team, and that ways it builds up. But this monotony, it is bound to hit you. It is up to you, how well oiled your machinery is to keep going without having to feel monotony.
With monotony.
It's up to you.
Okay. We have a few questions. We're going to wrap this up now. We have a few questions from our viewers.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Ravi Shankar Pandey is asking, how important is it to do moods? Okay. Every time we get this question, but yeah.
So honestly, I'm the wrong person because I've done is three class modes. But like I said, irrespective of how big a forum you go to, what I mean, even if you've done Jessup or any big international mode, what works is, I mean, you could just go
Sorry,
stand there
Tyagarajan,
and
we'll
discuss, and you'd be
I'll just
destroyed.
stop you for a moment. Tyagarajan, one second. One second. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
lost you in the middle. We couldn't hear the answer. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is, irrespective of what foro you go to, what kind of a moot you do, the moment you become a lawyer, the moment you step in as a lawyer, even the lowest court can tear you apart. So it's not very important to do a moot to become a good litigation lawyer. At the same time, I would say it does play a big role in understanding how presentation works.
Okay, great. Now, next question is from Ravi. Okay. Ravi Shankar Pandey is asking, what if we don't moot at all? I think that is an answer, question already answered. Smith Parekh is asking, is there any way to learn various court procedures, as in what steps can be taken next when a client approaches us with a particular matter? Example, should we serve a notice or directly file a suit? Other than working in a law firm or under a lawyer. So he's asking, like, is there any other way of learning apart from
The
working with a
well, in our, you only learn from mistakes, especially being a lawyer. You can never learn from others' mistakes. You There are I mean, eye pleaders and LawSikho are doing a great thing, teaching people a lot of things, but uh, you have to get your fingers burnt. There is no other way that you'll learn everything. There's no way that I can assure you.
right. Great. So then we have Smith Parekh only asking us, since you have worked in different states, do we need to know the local language of the state for lower courts, or just English would be sufficient?
You need to know the local language. I am from Tamil Nadu, so I know Tamil. I worked in my home state. Delhi, works English works in Delhi because you work in such forums. But if you're in other states, it's very important to know the local language. In this, there's no denying that.
Vritant Tua is asking how to start one's independent practice and how to go about it.
So each person has his own
Each
story.
person has his own.
Well, some people start off early. Some people just start getting matters 2 3 years into practice, and for some people it takes 10 years to go independent. So, like I mentioned during the course of our conversation, it's very important that You don't jump to a conclusion that you're ready to go independent. You take your time, be in chambers for as long as you can before you go independent. And to go independent, it requires a lot of money and infrastructure. So please plan everything.
So that brings us to end of all the questions. We are not taking any more questions today, and it's almost 9. So before we go, Tyagarajan, will you like to share one last message for our viewers and listeners about what to do to establish themselves in litigation, especially for the young ones who are planning to do litigation? What would be your
Okay.
message for them?
So, okay, this I'd like to share like a small incident. It might sound a little funny. So, I got married last year, and some 6 months ago, I googled my name, and all that came up was an ad my parents had placed in one of these matrimonial websites. Then I googled my wife's name, and all her achievements just became listed. Then that's when I realized, the difference between what I have done with my life and what she has done with her life. So it's just that she's taken her work very seriously, and I have not. So whatever it is, small or big, please take your work seriously. Please be, always aware of the fact that your actions have more than equal and more than opposite reactions, because you're a lawyer and somebody's life or death depends on you. So please be very careful, and please take whatever work that comes your way very seriously, as if this matter is like the make or break matter of your career. If you work like that, I think things work, and things have started working in my favor of late, because that is because I started taking work seriously. So please
So
do that.
please do that. Okay, I think that is fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Tyagarajan, for joining us and taking out your time, valuable time for our viewers and listeners. Really appreciate that, and we hope to have you back soon again, another day, talking about some other issues around legal career, or maybe some legal issues, substantive legal issues. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ramanand.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for the
Raman. Thanks
opportunity.
for the
Bye.
opportunity. Bye. Thanks. And good night, everyone. Do come back tomorrow. We have an hour with LawSikho, 4 to 5 p.m. Tomorrow is Saturday. On the weekend, on Saturday, we have an hour with LawSikho, 4 to 5 p.m. And we have another exciting guest with us tomorrow. And definitely subscribe to the LawSikho channel down there, because that's how you get all the notifications about amazing guests we have and all the other fantastic videos we'll be doing about legal career and legal issues. So look forward to seeing you subscribed to our LawSikho channel. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Bye. Good night.
Bye.